Have you ever played a gacha game that didn't experience power creep? Yeah, me neither. And Star Rail certainly doesn't break the mold. It's inevitable that as a game releases more and more characters, the result is going to be stronger and stronger team comp. We've all had a specific character we love be forced to be dropped, only because they can't clear content. But how much is this actually affecting Star Rail? Should we be worried about power creep going to the future? Or does the community make power creep seem like a bigger issue than it really is? Let's talk about it. It is undeniable that character power in Star Rail has increased massively since launch. When Star Rail first released, Seela was considered in a complete league of her own. Her single target damage was unmatched, and coupled with her resets, even in AoE content she was a menace as well. Many people wondered how a character could even be made that was comparable with her. And with Jingyuan being the second character released, it certainly didn't help our suspicions at the time. Now nearly a year later, Seela might not even be a top 5 DPS unit. If that's not power creep, I don't know what is. On its face, this sounds like a large issue. We're not even a year into the game, and the formerly highest rated DPS unit doesn't even belong in the highest tier anymore. It is very understandable why people are afraid of power creep. And it's certainly not only DPS units facing this issue either. You see these two characters? There is literally one fight in the entire game where Gepard is remotely comparable to Fu Xuan. For those of you who don't own these characters, it's the Sam boss fight. And for every other fight, Fu Xuan blows him out of the water. Fu Xuan, who's the newest sustain unit as of this recording, is by far the strongest. Maybe you think that's unfair because Gepard is a standard banner unit, but Fu Xuan is generally considered better than both the limited sustain units that came before her as well. Not only that, but aventurine seems like he's going to continue this power creep trend as well, meaning that as new units come out, they're just going to keep being stronger than the previous sustain units that came out before it. Would you rather use this crusty coffin carrier or this gorgeous gambling god? I know who I'm pulling for. We see this trend of new releases dominating their respective roles in every archetype in Star Rail. While Pridwin isn't exactly accurate, one look at their tier list shows new characters funneling at the top. Asheron, Jingliu, Black Swan, Kafka, Ron Mei, Sparkle, Fu Xuan. Are you seeing a single standard banner character anywhere near the top of this chart? Meanwhile, one look at the bottom half of this chart and you only see a singular limited banner unit. New characters for the most part are just better. Except for Argenti. Sorry, Bishonen lovers.
I was just explaining the significance of beauty to this foliage.
If you're new to gacha games, let me tell you, this is very expected. While visualizing myself as Numby every time Topaz rubs his nose is enough for me to pull for her, if you weren't dropped on your head at birth like I was, why would you pull for a new unit when it's worse than the ones that you already have? That sounds like the worst business strategy ever. How much money do you think Mihoyo would have lost on Ruanmei's boring kit if she wasn't the most overtuned unit ever? It's in Mihoyo's best interest to keep churning out broken and interesting kits so people keep spending on these units. And it's in my best interest to tell you to subscribe to the channel so I can afford to pull on Mihoyo's banner. But to Mihoyo's credit, even a year into them power creeping these units, these garbage power crept units can still clear content. Natasha is a completely worthless unit who does nothing better than any other unit in the game. She doesn't heal well, she doesn't give you extra damage, she isn't skill point efficient. Literally the only thing she has going for her is her precious smile. Interestingly, Natasha's uselessness is actually a point in Star Rail's favor in regards to power creep. I can use her, a completely worthless 4-star standard banner unit, to clear content. Just recently, I had the misfortune of being forced to use it for MSC 12 because the game keeps giving me the same worthless garbage instead of my knight in shining armor. When a garbage unit like Natasha can be used to clear content, maybe power creep isn't as big of an issue as we think, especially when Mihoyo seems to be retroactively buffing previously weak characters. This mischievous gesture's release actually resulted in Jingyuan, a previously considered power creep unit, to rise up again in popularity. Prior to Sparkle, Jingyuan's name was synonymous with one word: mid. Now, he's considered an all-around pretty solid unit, who's even stronger than he was at release. They're also releasing new relic sets that are great for older characters as well. To mention Jingyuan once again, the follow-up attack set is absolutely amazing with them. It actually helps them keep up in DPS with the newer units that are being released. Mihoyo has also made it a point to make content that caters towards older units. Himiko and Herta were considered amongst the worst units in the game at one point. They simply were not suited for the single target fights that MOC had to offer. Nowadays, Himiko is probably the best standard banner 5-star unit. She absolutely demolishes pure fiction, much like that laser does to me in my dreams. MOC has also seen turbulence buffs that result in older characters seeing a rise in popularity. While the skill point turbulence was mainly tailored for Sparkle, it actually resulted in Asta seeing more play as well. Because of the extra speed that Asta gave her team, it resulted in more turbulence stacks, meaning that you ended up getting more damage out of her speed buff than you ended up getting out of some other units. This actually resulted in Asta being a more viable pick for dot teams than Sampo was. The more you know. But even with newer characters buffing older ones, and with relic sets coming out that help the older characters as well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared for the future. Many of these older, especially standard banner units have such basic kits that it's really hard to see how MiHoYo can even buff these characters going into the future. Let's take a character like Gepard, for example. The entirety of his kit is that he has his ult for a shield, and that's pretty much it. How can a character like that compare to aventurine? Aventurine, who has an on-demand shield, has amazing damage, has team-wide buffs in the form of crit damage and effect res, and a boob window. As more preservation units come out, the next one is going to be topless. And if we're being honest, Gepard just can't compete with that. Unless MiHoYo releases a swimsuit suit, please do not include that in the video. Sparkle, in many ways, is a direct upgrade to Bronya. They basically just took an older character and stole their kits only to make it better. Not only did they copy Bronya's niche of action advancing a single unit, but they even copied her niche of giving that character crit damage as well. Not only that, they gave Sparkle a completely new mechanic in the form of giving her team skill points. If you're playing a non-skill point reliant DPS such as Jingliu, Bronya can be marginally better, but for a majority of the cast, Sparkle is just a direct upgrade from what Bronya used to do. That is not something you want to hear only a year into launch, when Bronya was considered the strongest support unit in the game. With the strength of many older units being tied to the newer units, that's also an issue. It's deceptively bad because this means that you're going to have to pull for newer units just to make your old ones stronger. How many of you ended up pulling on Rhinne simply because you wanted her broken stat buffs and not for her love of her kit? I find myself in the same exact predicament right now because I want to get this stupid rat off my team and replace it with a good sustain unit like Fu Xuan. Rhinne is certainly not the only character making older characters more viable here either. You want to play Sealer or Jing Yuan? Well, you probably should be pulling for Sparkle because it increases their DPS by a massive amount. I feel like I may be worried going into the future for whether or not they're going to be able to actually clear content. Trust me, I'm already dealing with those kind of issues right now. I am struggling to clear MOC 12 with my Seela, and I like to think that she has pretty good gear. I like using Seela and Jing Yuan, but it feels like if I want to keep using them into the future, characters that I'm using currently, such as Oster or Tingyun, may have to see the bench. I might have to start pulling for characters like Rhinne to make these characters more viable. I'm worried that in the future, I'll have to make a snap decision to kiss one of my units goodbye. All for the sake of making the current units I'm using at least remotely viable for clearing content. That's not the type of Star Rail I want to play. I don't want to feel obligated to pull for a unit whose only strong point is her mommy energy. I want to pull for Robin because I like Robin, and anytime she sings, it feels like a girl's giving me some form of attention. I don't want to pull for Robin because she's the only reason Topaz will be viable in the future. But if this power creeping trend continues, they've already made direct upgrades to two of the strongest standard banner characters currently. Bronya got completely upgraded in the form of Sparkle, and Gepard got completely upgraded in the form of Aventurine. What is stopping them from doing something like this in the future? Are we not just going to see direct upgrades to Aventurine? Are we not just going to see a direct upgrade to Sparkle? Am I the only one worried about this? Am I delusional? Maybe. I am delusional. Uwu.